situation. Well, years ago, I noticed in a paper that there was a section of the paper and it was titled Arts and Leisure. Arts and Leisure. And I thought to myself, I'm gonna sit and think about this for a while. Do you ever just arrive at something and you just stop yourself, just stop down, shut everything out, and just sit and think about it? You do? I'm so glad to hear you say that, Amy. I thought I was the only one, so. So I thought about it for a while, and it continued to kind of rattle around in my mind and my consciousness over the years. And driving to work today, driving to the campus, I thought to myself, what the heck am I going to talk about with the kids? And I thought, I know, I want to get their feedback on arts and leisure. Now I'm going toward the prehistoric with this, so hold on. And when I think arts and leisure, when I see those two words put together, I'm a little bit insulted because I have spent my entire career, my entire life in the arts. And so in putting it in juxtaposition with leisure makes me feel lazy. It makes me feel like that thing that I've spent my entire life pursuing is trivial. Because we kind of think of leisure as being lazy, or at least I think that. And why would I think that?
Because leisure is like lenient.
It's like what, Chacha?
Lenient, like.
Lenient?
Yeah.
Even the word sounds
Same.
like we're going to take a nap, doesn't it? Yeah. Any other ideas? Why I would think leisure would be a negative thing?
Because people, when you collect on people, they tend to take advantage of it.
Okay, say it a little louder so the video will pick it up.
Okay, so when you like are too relaxed and too laid back, when certain people tend to take advantage of it and try to only on certain things.
Yeah, so if you're too leisurely, people will take advantage, maybe think you're not smart enough or something, because you're being
Too nice or
too nice. Okay.
gullible in a sense, green.
Okay, cool, all right. In America, we have this sort of concept or this philosophy embedded into our DNA, and it comes out of Protestantism. You know who the Protestants are? I'm talking religion now. They came over from England, and they began to dominate the people, the indigenous peoples of America. But they embedded into America this ethic of work. You ever heard of a work ethic? And the Protestants were hard-working folks. If you weren't working, you weren't necessary, right? Do any of you have grandparents or parents like that? Get up off the couch and do something, right? I grew up with my mother saying, walking in the living room going, you're sitting on the couch again, get up, do some work. We come by that honest because of this idea that the Protestants brought with them to America, that if you're not working, you're lazy. Nobody wanted to be a cheese-eating, wine-drinking Frenchie, right? That was a terrible thing to be. So the problem is that it stems from this bias that we've inherited over the centuries. So that today we think leisure is lazy, is somebody's going to take advantage of it. If we're not working hard, then people aren't going to respect us, right? If we're not able to show that our hard work is helping us to succeed, we're not going to be accepted. There's something wrong with us. We're depending on other people for our survival. So I started ingesting all of that and putting it together and saying, well, that's a terrible way to juxtapose the arts and that sort of thinking and that sort of psychology, right? Because the arts have value, do they not? Yeah. So what do you do when you are not studying or in class or working or taking care of your family? What do you do?
Perfect my craft.
You do what?
Perfect my craft.
Perfect your craft. Adam, what do you do when you finally have everything to yourself? When you're not having to push, work, labor, when labor is over with, what do you do?
Well, I try to think on myself to see if I can fix myself even better, or, just really relax the body and just, meditate and stuff like that.
Do you listen to music?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So you might listen to music, but you go internal,
yeah,
right? Is your environment important to you?
yeah.
Okay, how so?
I feel like the environment plays an important factor because, it affects on how you react or how you may think or, what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
Because of your surroundings.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Anybody else? What do you do when labor's done for the day? You watch videos?
Mostly.
You play video games?
Play a game.
Play video games?
Relax and find something that I can relax with.
Gotcha. Like what?
Ooh.
Like what?
Well, most of the time it's just playing a game. But on a good day, when the day I feel like doing something more productive, if I do my homework on time, early,
Mm-hmm.
I might write a poem or something or like.
Poetry. Thank you so much for saying that. Poetry. Spoken word? Absolutely. Absolutely. Nisha, what do you do when you work all the time, don't you? You're always going to do. But what do you do when you finally have a moment?
I dance.
You dance. Guys, these are all art forms. Do you realize that? So when you get to a moment of leisure in your life, where do you turn? To the arts, to yourself, to the way that you've nurtured your own self, right? You can enjoy yourself because you've worked on yourself.
Right.
And a lot of times it's through the arts. Pursuing, what'd you say, JJ?
Perfecting my craft.
Perfecting your craft. So when you're finally through doing it for everybody else, for your professors, for your parents, for your family, you can be with yourself, right? Isn't that what we all desire to be, truly? Isn't that truly free? When we can be with ourselves and enjoy ourselves and experience the things that we want to experience? Where is Ms. Robertson going with this? How on earth is she going to work it back to prehistory? Anything anybody else want to say about arts and leisure? Just trying to give you stuff to think about. So, throughout human history, we're going to see that the more opportunities that a society has for leisure, the more flourishing their arts are going to become. Societies that have to get up at the crack of dawn, work themselves to death, just to put food on the table, just to survive, you'll see art forms, but they won't be as rich. You know? I read somewhere that if humans did not have art, that they would literally scratch and crawl at the ground until they created it. And you're going to see this as we go through the study of art history, that any time a society is unable to have leisure time, its arts are the first thing that suffer. And isn't art, isn't that what we just said? That what we do is work and do what we do so we can have that freedom of our leisure time to be totally ourselves and do exactly what we want. And oftentimes that involves an art form, poetry, dance. Anybody sew? Anybody? You sew? Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
On what?
Just a little bit.
A little bit? Do you enjoy doing it in your leisure time? Okay. Yeah, you can't really do it when you're studying and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Video games. Definitely video games are an art form. Definitely. It is no different in prehistory. Now, we tend to think about people in the Paleolithic, hunters and gatherers. So we tend to think about those people as running from lions, right? Maybe killing each other to stay alive. You know, this group of humans, they have food, and this group of humans sees them, and they go over there and kill them, right? Get their food. Or at least that's kind of the way I think about it, you know. It was a pretty brutal time period. I don't necessarily think that was the fact. That's a fact. I think those people were no different than we are. That they had those same desires. That they wanted to work, get their labor done for the day, and then they wanted to relax. And when they did, they created their own unique art forms. You've heard of the cave paintings, right? Have you seen the cave paintings? You know what I'm talking about, cave paintings? Let me see if I can find a picture of a cave painting. Oh, yeah. You know, one of my best friends, who was one of my mentors, she's passed away now, but she had that tattoo on her ankle down here. So cool. Art history nerds. So this is a painting in a cave, and it is an image that on your final exam, when you see this image, you need to be able to say the name of the cave in which it is located, the time period it was created. You need to know where in the world that cave is located. And you need to be able to describe how this might have been done. And you need to also explain why it was done. Now, it's really hard to get a sense of scale when you see an image like this. But what I want you to know is that the human being was probably only about that big that created those, all right? About that big. They're enormous. And not only are they enormous, the human beings that created beings, there was more than one human being that created them, considered the contours of the cave. You ever been in a cave? You ever done one of those tacky tourist things where you go in a cave and you look up and you see they're bumpy, right? They've got undulations and bumps and everything. Well, when they painted these animals, they took that into consideration. And the reason that they did that is because lighting effects. And what I mean by that is that,
No, I was gonna say so, but and then I'll ask the question.
okay. So these drawings, these cave paintings, were located deep inside Lascaux Cave in France, or modern day France. They were located very deep inside the cave. You ever been deep inside a cave? Well, let me tell you, it is pitch black unless you have a light source. I used to scuba dive, and we'd scuba dive in caves, and when the light went out, it was freaky. I didn't like it. It is pitch black. So the only way anyone could have been able to see these was fire. We're talking prehistory, fire. So at the end of the day, after you had been hunting for your dinner, or gathering berries, nuts, things like that for your dinner, you would have gone to the family clan, and you would have said, "Let's go." And you would have all gone together deep into the cave while people ahead of you held torches. When you got deep into the cave, they would build a fire, and it would crackle and burn and flicker against the walls. You ever been in a situation like that where there's a fire and it's making shadows dance on the wall. You ever been like that? Okay, then that would have been what would happen. And as those shadows flickered and the light caught those undulations in the rock, the animals would have appeared to move. It would have been spectacular. It would have been theatrical. And as the family clan sat around the fire, there would have been someone describing the hunt, the animals, because in that time, what they saw was the natural world around them. And so they would have talked about and maybe sung about the animal kingdom, the animals that sustained their lives. They were being leisurely. Maybe they took snacks in there, hang out, eat some snacks, drink a little fermented beverage, watch the animals flicker, watch the play unfold. And over time, these ancient people would have added to the images in the cave. They would have layered over. See how they look like they're overlapping? So this would have happened over a course of time, maybe 100 years. Yes, ma'am?
So you think they just started maybe with one animal, or even one part of the animal, and then just kept building?
I'm so glad you asked that. Before we talk about that, let's talk about why they ever had the desire to do it in the first place. Whatever gave them the idea in the first place to go deep inside a cave where they probably couldn't see and realize they had to back out and get some light to go back in there?
So if they have a timeline based off of what the current events that they had within their culture?
You mean of production and things that they did? Yeah, we can see a timeline of that. Yeah, did I answer your question?
No, I'm saying is that what was going on with the caves, were they portraying the timeline, like they're putting down their timeline, like their history?
Oh, I see. Possibly. They're possibly. But I don't know that early humans really, they probably were not creating these things and thinking, oh, 2,000 or 35,000 years from now, people will be looking at them. They were more of the moment. But, so I'm not sure that there was this whole idea of this long timeline and they were thinking about showing the concept of the passing of time. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
They probably were not interested so much, although that's a whole different philosophical thought of how humans portray the passage of time. So you could have said this was the horse here and this was the horse here the next day. They might be showing repetitive imagery to indicate some sense of time, the passing of time. We don't really know. So let's get back to the other question though. Whatever inspired the first person to do this, to make a mark like this? I'm going to give you a hint. We don't know the answer definitively. We only have some ideas. Because nobody's around to tell us. So if you had to guess, now that we've been talking about arts and leisure, yes, sir? Boredom?
Or it just felt like they needed to get up and do something, like they needed to go out and do something.
Okay.
They didn't have like real jobs and stuff, so.
Real job.
I mean, like
No, I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh at you. I just love the way you said
You
that.
know what I mean? Like they just, at that time, they didn't start building shelter on it until like Neolithic or Meso, I can't remember, but
Yeah.
in the Paleolithic time era, it wasn't a lot of
What?
structure for it as far as.
It wasn't a lot of, they weren't settling down.
Yeah. So
Yeah, They were very
just,
nomadic, yeah.
Yeah, they probably just like, all right, that's the one I look good. Let me see what I can do with it.
Yeah. Any other ideas? That's a good idea. Yes, ma'am?
Like kind of going off what you said, like an outlet of creativity, like trying to release the mind, kind of a way to release the mind.
a way to release the mind. Very good. Any other ideas? A diary, a document, like a documenting. Yeah, absolutely. Any other ideas? Any final ideas? Like I said, we don't really know.
It was probably used for storytelling for like the youth.
Maybe
Like the
story,
kids.
education. Maybe education.
Yeah, they
Very
probably
good idea.
Describe all their hunts and stuff like that. Too.
Sir?
I say they probably describe like every hunt, you know, to their little ones.
Yes, yes. Maybe they're trying to teach them how to survive. You know, hey man, don't mess with this guy over here. You know, right? Something like that. Yeah, all very good ideas. Okay, so here's your information. You can find it in the book. This is the Hall of the Bulls. That's the title of the work. Nomenclature is going to be important in this course. And nomenclature is name, artist's name, name of the work, date of the work, what's it made out of, where is it located, so on and so forth. That's called nomenclature. And I'm going to be checking for that, so learn how to do it. So, Hall of the Bulls, it's in Lascaux, France. We just call it, if you say the Lascaux cave art, people know what you're talking about, but you're going to need to write Hall of the Bulls, Lascaux, France. CA, does anybody know what CA means? Yes,
Like
sir.
an estimate, it's like an estimate.
Yes, it's an estimate, yeah. Circa is what it stands for. C-I-R-C-A, circa. A terrible spelling. Circa. And circa means give about 10 to 100 years one way or the other. So anytime you see circa, it means about. And this was created 16,000 to 14,000. Remember what BC stands for? BCE?
Before Christ existed.
Before Common Era.
In art history scholarship, we use before the Common Era. But it coincides, it maps over the Christian, Anno Domino, the same thing, okay? So don't think I'm being sacrilegious by using, I'm in my scholarship role, so I use BCE, before Common Era, or BC. And then after 1 or 0 is CE, Common Era. So we're in the Common Era. Some people will not even put a point in time. You just go back, you know, and boy, that's very confusing. The largest bull is 11 feet, 6 inches long, just to give you an idea, all right? So no Lascaux Cave. Not only was there cave art, there was carving. And this little chick right here is named the Venus of Willendorf. You need to know the Venus of Willendorf, okay? Somebody tell me what time it is, please.
11:36.
Okay, somebody tell me when it gets to be 11:45. Thank you. The Venus of Willendorf. Oh, I want to go back to your. Will you tell me your name, ma'am? I didn't catch it.
Taylor.
Taylor. Hey, Taylor, you made it.
Yes.
I'm doing this. Okay. No, I'm doing it for Sania too.
I saw her, yeah, in the email too.
Okay, good, yeah, so we'll have this. And you guys can refer back to it as well, I'll put it on Canvas. So, I want you to know about the Venus of Willendorf. So if you are at leisure, y'all ever seen some old timers sitting there whittling, you know, give themselves a stick? My papa used to get a stick of wood and sit out in the backyard and whittle, right? Leisure, didn't have to work, but we like to keep our hands busy, don't we? Keeps us out of trouble, keeps me out of trouble. So you see quite a bit, in addition to pictorial or painting like this, on caves, and also, we're not just in France, but also petroglyphs, which are markings on rocks. Native American, the indigenous people of Americas were creating petroglyphs. Not going to get all into that. But you also see people carving, and they carve things mostly ivory or animal bone, because it was easier for them to carve with the tools that they had to carve with. Sometimes they'd be walking along the edge of a river, and they'd look down, and there'd be a rock, and they'd say, hey man, that rock looks just like a bull. And they'd pick that rock up, and they'd take it, and they'd do a little whittling on it. So they were very sensitive to the world around them. Venus of Willendorf, we believe, is a fertility image. Okay? Let me see if I got a bigger picture of her. Yeah, there's a picture of her, and that's just how big she is.
Real life?
Yeah, in real life, that's how big the Venus of Willendorf is. We call her Venus because it's a holdover from Greece. But these are her breasts. Look how big they are. Now let me tell you something. You guys will never know this, but you women, if you've ever been pregnant or you're going to get pregnant, you're going to remember the Venus of Willendorf and those big old breasts. Oh my God. And then look how she's so heavy. So these are physical, anatomically, physically, she's representing a woman who is fertile. In prehistory, the ability for your species to survive was everything. So being able to reproduce was the most important thing that the human being could do. They lived to be able to reproduce. So in order to ensure that this was going to happen, this cult of the fertility figure began to evolve. And we see it all across ancient humanity, not just in France, which the Venus of Willendorf wasn't found in France. It was found, I forget where, in Germany, I think. That's where we get the Willendorf. So you need to know the name, Venus of Willendorf, where it was found, about what time it was created, what's it made out of. We don't know the artist's name. But we do know there were a lot of fertility figures, and they were associated with this idea of needing to ensure human procreation. And stylistically, I'll use that word a lot. It means this particular way in which it is created and the way it looks. Stylistically, you're going to see when they're fertility figures, the breasts are large, the body is, the hips are large. They saw no reason to give her any feet. You don't need to feet, I guess, when you're a mom. She's got her hands, see her little delicate hands are over her breast. They didn't give her a face. This is very typical. It's not about this being this individual person. It's about representing fertility. So now the Venus of Willendorf. Dates. There's more information. All of this is in your book. Know about where in the world these things were located. Art history is a great way to get into geography. If you've always kind of felt, I've always felt kind of stupid, like somebody will say, it's in Cologne. And I'm like, Cologne. So use your art history studies to brush up on your geography if you struggle with it like I do. And then finally, all this is in your book. Oh, this is really cool. See how you're seeing more of this fertility, big bone women, huh? Carvings. Understand the different types of art. You've got wall paintings, you've got carvings. As society begins to evolve, this is a death mask. It's believed that when people began to settle down finally and build their villages, when someone died, they'd bury them in the floor of their house and leave their head sticking up, and just a burial practice, Seems odd to us, right? But 2,000 years from now, people will think it was odd that we put each other in the ground, or our burials. Huh? Our mausoleums, yeah. So you got a lot of information, but I want to circle back around. I'll start covering architecture later, but right now I want to kind of give you this deep foundation of where art began. Remember when we said we didn't really know why they created the cave paintings? What was the original inspiration? Let's say your grandfather dies. You're prehistoric human. And your grandfather dies. And you loved your grandfather. And that night, your grandfather comes to you and visits with you. And you're able to speak with your grandfather. And your grandfather shows you some very sage advice. Points to something maybe. Now the next day, you go to your sister or your brother and you say, grandfather visited with me last night. You and I know that that was what?
A spirit. Or a dream.
You and I know it was probably a dream, right? Unless you believe that, and that's okay. Prehistoric humans dreamed. They lived just like we live. And so when they were visited by grandfather, and then they woke up the next day, they had to figure out a way to deal with this thing that was happening. How come no one else could see grandfather? I could see grandfather. So mystery about the universe, mystery about life, mystery about what happens when a human is no longer there in front of you. Mystery is what we think originally compelled the earliest humans to make marks. That's what we believe. We'll never know for sure. But it's always that quest of human beings to understand, why am I here? And where am I going? Aren't we still trying to do that today? We ask ourselves, why am I here? And where am I going? We're no different than we were 35, 40,000 years ago. We just got laptops and iPhones. Yes, Taylor?
It's 11:45.
Okay, 11:40? 11:45. All right, any questions? Any questions? No?
Do you think well, I was just looking up the Venus of Willendorf.
Yes.
Do you think that she was supposed to be like African American woman?
At that time, we believe that people who were living in Europe we know that Africa is a cradle of civilization. Scholars pretty much are also agreed that humans came out of Africa. They came up around where Israel and Jerusalem, and they moved up. So the Mediterranean was this natural water barrier between the cradle of civilization in Africa and then Europe to the north. There was another barrier, though, and it was ice. There was an ice age. So Africa was nice, lush, warm, fertile. Why would you leave that place, right? But as the ice began to retreat in the north, humans, curious, we're always going to be, what are we doing now? Space, right? We're always going to be exploring new territory. So humans began to move up into those areas. That ice retreats, leaves these great caves in the ground. I forgot what you asked me. Oh, Venus Willendorf. So more than likely, these ancestors were very African in nature, right? They still had that DNA was moving up, and so she doesn't really necessarily represent a race of people, because that race of people that would have been in Europe at that time they were us a long time ago, right? But they would have not been anything like who we are today.
Right.
They're probably small, scrawny, because they were having to get by on the fly. But we know they were very nomadic, so that could have been created further south and then carried, because you see it's held in the hand. So most art would have been either nomadic or, yeah.
Okay.
You each have a topic to present on Monday, remember? 5 minutes. You can use this board. We have an Apple TV we can use. But as you weren't here on Monday, those of you who were not here on Monday, Kiel presented, and we said we wanted more photos, we needed a little bit more depth in-depth information. Adam, I still haven't given you anything to present. Does anybody not have a topic to discuss on Monday? So you see how I give you this big overview, but I want you guys to drill down into something that's interesting to you. And I'm gonna assign you in the beginning, but if you say to me, Ms. Robertson, I really think that's cool, then I'm gonna say, hey, well, why don't you tell us more about it? Why don't you do some research? And that way you'll be a subject matter expert on a very tiny aspect of the project. And that way, the next time you're at a cocktail party, you can say something like, you know, that Venus of Willendorf. Adam, did you see anything today that was interesting to you? Because I haven't given you a topic yet.
Yeah, the cave paintings.
You want to do something more on cave paintings?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's your topic? Anybody else need a topic? All right. See you guys Monday. Remember Friday, you need to set yourself a goal to get your presentation done. Lots of pictures, cite your sources. Let me know if you have. Cite your sources. Okay. All right, guys, I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.